Room 1401. David sat on the edge of the hotel bed, staring out the window at the city skyline. The view was nothing special, just gray buildings stacked against each other, their windows glowing faintly in the early evening haze. But David wasn't looking at the city. He was looking at his past. 3 years ago, his wife stood in the doorway, suitcase in hand. "Are you really going to let me walk out?" She had asked him that one last time, but even as the words reached him, he hesitated. He overthought it. He said nothing. And then she was gone, just like his business. And 1 year later, he had the biggest opportunity of his career. A startup deal that could have changed everything. His gut told him to go for it, but instead, he slept on it. The next morning, the deal was gone. Someone else had taken the risk, and now they were a multimillionaire, and he was broke. And then, the worst part, JoJo stopped showing up. JoJo, his lifelong guide, his voice of confidence. David met JoJo when he was 6, a little boy just like him who sat cross-legged in the dark whenever David was scared. "You ain't got to be afraid, D," JoJo had said. "Just tell yourself you're not." As David grew, JoJo grew too. At 12, JoJo was a teenager, coaching him on how to talk to girls, how to throw a punch, how to fake confidence until it felt real. At 21, JoJo became a sharp-dressed hustler, always leaning against something, always knowing exactly what to say. "You want to win, D? Then stop thinking so much and just go for it." JoJo always pushed him, until one day he didn't. The day David lost everything, JoJo just wasn't there. And without him, David froze. He lost his wife, he lost his business, and he lost himself. And now here he was, broke, desperate, and yet he had an opportunity that felt like a final one. David was checking into his hotel room in anticipation for an important interview on the next day, but the hotel lost his reservation. However, the hotel staff quickly gave him a different room, room 1401. "We just opened that room up," the front desk clerk had said. The first room on the 14th floor. David sighed, rubbing his face. Maybe this was his last shot. He lay back on the bed, closing his eyes. And then, David, a voice. Familiar. Rougher now. David's eyes snapped open. JoJo was standing at the foot of the bed, and for the first time in his life, JoJo looked exactly the same age as him. "I was wondering when you'd call me back." JoJo pulled up a chair, spun it around, and sat backward like he always did. "All right, D, I know why you're here. You got one shot, and you don't want to mess it up. So let's do what we always do. I'll tell you the moves, and you just follow along. Got it?" David exhaled sharply. He should have felt relieved. JoJo was back, but something felt off. "Yeah, I got it," he said. JoJo grinned. "Good. So what do you want?" David didn't hesitate. "I want the job." JoJo nodded. "I want to marry someone amazing." Another nod. "I want to live in L.A. JoJo smirked. "Simple enough. Just stick to the plan." And then David woke up. The sun streamed through the curtains. His phone buzzed. David walked into the business meeting ready to follow JoJo's plan. He memorized every line JoJo had given him. But when the CEO leaned back in his chair, smirking, something hit David all at once. "This isn't working. JoJo isn't here. I have to do this myself." And for the first time in his life, David went off script. He pitched a different idea, one JoJo hadn't given him. And the CEO, he was stunned. "Now that is the kind of thinking we need," he said. "You're hired." Just like that. Later that night, David was out celebrating with his new business partners. That's when he saw her, the actress he had always dreamed about. His instinct was to ask JoJo what to say, but then he stopped himself. He walked up to her, didn't use JoJo's advice, just spoke like himself. By the end of the night, she had given him her number. 2 days later, his new company called. "David, we're expanding. Hope you don't mind." "Where?" "L.A." David sat back on the private jet, feeling like a different person. He leaned his head against the seat and closed his eyes, and there he was, JoJo, arms crossed, grinning. "You didn't listen to me," JoJo said. David opened his mouth to apologize, but JoJo cut him off. Nah, don't even start." JoJo exhaled, rolling his shoulders like he was shaking something loose. It's about damn time, D. He leaned back, looking lighter than before, almost like he wasn't supposed to be here anymore. I got things to do, places to go. That include you. David frowned. So what now? JoJo smirked. That's not my call anymore, boss. You got this. He turned, walking away. The shadows swallowed him whole. But just before he vanished, his voice came back one last time. If you ever need me again...